Good afternoon, Rob. How are you, Rob? Thanks, Rob. There is sparkling water. The minister needs sparkling water all the time. She doesn't drink still water. The media briefing at least. Colleagues, good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming through. It's exactly 1 o'clock, the time that we promised to host this media briefing. We will not waste time. We have the Minister of Basic Education with us, the Deputy Ministers here, the DG as well. We also have Dr. Tembu, as well as Dr. Polia. They're all here to provide support to the Minister. Without any waste of time, Minister, I'm going to hand over to you to take us through the statement. Thereafter, we will go through a presentation and then do further questions later. Thanks very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Elijah, and a very good afternoon to our colleagues in the room and elsewhere. Good afternoon to the Deputy Minister, Dr. Haule, and the DG, Mr. Mwede, and our DDGs here, Dr. Tembu and Dr. Polia, who've both been very instrumental in the rolling out of our examination process up to date. And I want to personally thank the two of them for the hard work that they've done thus far. It has been good and successful, but it has not always been easy. We are now at the conclusion, colleagues, of the 2024 National Senior Certificate Examination, which is a significant milestone, not only for the learners who take the exams, but for the sector as a whole, but also for the thousands of educators who have worked tirelessly with their learners for the past 12 years to arrive at this point. The 2024 NSC exams commenced on the 21st of October with the English language paper, and it spanned over 28 intensive days of assessment. This has been a massive logistical undertaking with a total of over 727,000 full-time candidates and over 155,000 part-time candidates having sat for these critical exams across the country. Despite some challenges, the overall administration of these exams has been successful, with minimal irregularities thanks to the collective efforts of dedicated educators, administrators, and learners themselves. The administration of these exams has highlighted both the triumphs and areas of improvement in our system. On the positive side, our stringent monitoring and ensured a fair process at all times. High-risk examination centers were closely supervised, with a minimum of 70% of our exam centers monitored during each session. This robust system helped us maintain the integrity of the exams even in the face of external disruptions. However, there were some challenges. Protest actions in various parts of the country, including Jan Kempdorp, Sibande, and in Limpopo, as well as inclement weather in Eastern Cape and Mpumalanga, disrupted exams for some learners. In the Eastern Cape alone, 319 learners were unable to write due to flooding, but contingency plans were made and they are now able to rewrite those exams. These incidents reinforce the importance of proactive planning and collaboration with disaster management teams, which have helped us mitigate the impact of these learners. On a more somber note, we must acknowledge the violent incidents that overshadowed this exam period in parts of the country. In the Eastern Cape, 5 learners were gang raped while they were preparing for their exams at a local home. And just weeks later, another female student was also gang raped on November 13th, also in the Eastern Cape. These heinous acts are a tragic reminder of the dangers that many of our learners face, especially young girls. As we observe 16 days of activism against gender-based violence and femicide, let these incidents be a rallying call to us all as South Africans to stand against these barbaric acts. Schools and communities should be places of safety at all times. They cannot be spaces of fear, violence, or abuse. With the conclusion of the writing of the exams, our focus now must shift to the marking process, which is also a very critical phase in determining the outcome of our learners' hard work. The department has set up 181 marking centers across the country, all of which have been audited and deemed ready. All marking centers will open on the 27th of November, with the entire process involving over 50,000 markers. The integrity of this process is absolutely important. To ensure consistency and fairness, the department has already conducted 60 of the 164 planned marking standardization meetings, during which marking guidelines are reviewed and finalized. This rigorous process will help us deliver accurate, reliable results, which are expected to be released on the 13th of January 2025, with all provincial education departments releasing their results on the 14th of January 2025. A significant emphasis has also been placed on food safety at marking centers. Online workshops on food handling protocols have been conducted for examination managers, marking center managers, and school principals to prevent any contamination. Ensuring clean and continuous water supply and adequate hydration in high temperature areas is also integral in our preparations. These measures tie into a broader campaign on food safety across all our schools. This is following the recent incidents involving foodborne illnesses linked to agricultural grade pesticides, and the Director General has, to this effect, issued a circular to all schools in all the provinces advising against the use and the storage of these chemicals on school premises. We have also advised school principals to not allow onto the school premises vendors or food items bought from vendors who are not compliant with all the applicable laws. This heightened awareness and regulation aims to protect learners and staff from preventable health hazards. As we celebrate the resilience and hard work of our learners, we cannot ignore social issues that impact their safety and their well-being. The gang rapes of learners during this exam period is a stark reminder of the violence that continues to plague our society. These incidents have left me, and I believe many South Africans, deeply angered and saddened. They underscore the urgent need for collective action to create a safer environment for our children. The 16 days of activism is a moment for us to recommit ourselves to ending the scourge of violence, which is experienced by women and children on a daily basis in this country. And I call on every South African, parents, educators, community leaders, and government officials to play their part in ensuring that no child is to endure such trauma. Education cannot thrive in a society where learners fear for their lives. And as we conclude this phase of the NSC exams, I also want to address our learners directly. The end of the exams is a time for celebration, but it must be done responsibly. I urge matriculants to refrain from alcohol abuse during pens down events and matric rage parties. These moments of celebration of achievements should not risk life and safety. It's absolutely important that we do not engage, and you do not engage in reckless behavior. There's nothing more heartbreaking than parents having to bury their children after they've endured long 12 years in school because of having really tempered with irresponsible and dangerous behavior. So we urge our learners to please practice restraint, even in times of celebration, so that you may be able to be there to accept your results and continue with the rest of your life. Finally, I want to remind everyone involved in the NSC exam process that our work is not yet complete. While exam writing may be over, the task of marking, standardizing, and processing results lies ahead. It is crucial that we remain focused and committed to ensuring the accuracy and the integrity of this process. Let us not celebrate yet, as premature celebration can triumph into defeat. There's still much more to be done before we can reach the finish line, And let us keep our shoulders to the wheel, strengthen our resolve, and deliver an exam process that will make this country proud. To the educators, the officials, the team here at DBE, parents, and all stakeholders who have supported this process thus far, I extend my heartfelt gratitude. Your dedication and hard work has been instrumental in ensuring a smooth and credible examination process. Together, we are building an education system that upholds the values of fairness, integrity, and excellence. As we await the final results, which will be released on the 13th of January 2025, and prepare to celebrate the achievements of the class of 2024, let us do so with the same commitment and focus that has carried us thus far. Our learners deserve nothing less. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. We will now go straight to the presentation. It will be delivered by Dr. Rufus Polio, who is the Chief Director for National Assessments and Public Examinations. Dr. Polio, over to you.
Thank you, Program Director. Good afternoon to the Honourable Minister, and good afternoon to the Honourable Deputy Minister. Good afternoon to our Director General, Deputy Director General, and all members of the media that are present. Our Minister has provided a very appropriate and quite a detailed account of the examinations to this point. And what I am going to do is to just fill in some of the additional detail that you may be interested in. And I will provide you with a kind of summation of the examinations up to this point, but also focus on the next steps and how do we get to the final date of the 14th of January 2025, a day that all of us are anxiously awaiting with bated breath. The statistics have been provided by our Minister, and I think what is important is that we had 181 question papers to be written in this examination. And I must say that the fact that we've reached the 177 mark is indeed an achievement, and we only have 4 papers as at this morning, but we already had 2 papers that were written this morning, so we really have 2 papers that are left. One will start in the next few minutes, DG, at 2 o'clock, and that would in fact be the official end of the examination when this paper is written. Tomorrow's examination is really what we refer to as a rewrite opportunity for computer applications technology, where learners may have experienced some technical problems with the writing of computer applications technology. So this morning, as we were making our way to Cape Town, Agricultural Management Practice and Marine Sciences was written, and both these papers have been written without a single problem, which is certainly an indication of the maturity and the level of planning and efficiency that has gone into the exam. And design will start in the next few minutes. Tomorrow, as I indicated, will be the CAT paper 1, which will be written by 542 learners. These learners are learners who wrote the first CAT paper, but may have had a problem in terms of the work not being saved, or there may have been some computer-related problem, and we accommodate these learners. And Minister also alluded to the 319 learners from the Eastern Cape that were affected by the flooding. So those 319 learners will be given an opportunity to write the examination tomorrow morning. This is the 27-day summary, which our Minister has covered in some detail. And what I think for me is to be lauded is the partnership and the working together with our Prof Jocks and our NAT Jock that has helped us to deal with any situation like the protest action that we had in the Northern Cape, the protest action in Limpopo. And we want to appreciate the close working relationship with the South African Police Services. We also had protest action in Mpumalanga that also was resolved. So none of our learners were affected by protest action and were not able to write. The storm disruption, we had storms, we had bad weather, but I must say, and we did indicate this in our last media briefing, that this examination has caused us to look at the weather with a greater sense of intensity and plan more effectively. And Dr. Ntembu, who is a geography teacher, educator by training, was able to provide us with weather reports predicting what the weather conditions would be for the week. And we shared this with our provinces, and this helped us to prepare more effectively for weather conditions relating to rain, storms, high temperature, wind. We even have got to the point of looking at the dam levels. Dam levels are important simply because we have marking centers, 181 which Minister has referred to, and they are at different parts of the country. So where the dam levels are low, we need to make sure that we have contingencies in place to accommodate whatever water shortages may occur. Now, we also had a number of learners taking ill during the exam, but the system has accommodated them where exams can be written in hospital under controlled conditions and where the invigilator would be a district official, and we had a large number of candidates that wrote in hospital, and those that were unwell in the morning would have been assisted in some way. And I must say that there's an immense degree of resilience on the part of our learners. Despite their illness, they would come to the exam room and do their best to complete the examination. This is an indication of the kind of commitment that our learners have to attaining the matric certificate. We had the normal kind of irregularities, that which we refer to as administrative, candidates not being registered, but the system will accommodate every learner. If you are unregistered, you will be given an opportunity to write. We declare it a technical irregularity, we investigate, and if there's some evidence that you did register, your script will be marked and processed. Cell phone possession, crib note possession, unfortunately, we still have learners who want to try and circumvent the system, but we have measures in place. And we've picked up occasions of learners walking into an exam room with either a crib note or a cell phone, and that has been dealt with in terms of our protocol. But I can confidently say that the number of crib note possessions, the number of cell phone possession has significantly decreased. Imposter candidates is simply where you have a candidate who is not registered that comes in to write on behalf of the registered candidate. And we had 2 cases of imposter candidates, and both of them were picked up and in fact arrested, because that's a criminal offense, and the criminal system in the country will take care of these 2 candidates. There was an unfortunate incident in KZN where a learner was involved in some criminal activity the night before the examination, and the police then tracked him to the school. But where the police had faltered is that they removed him from the exam room while the exam was in progress, and this learner could not complete the exam. We have taken this matter up with the Prof Job and the NET Job, because the right to education and the right to write an examination supersedes the dealing of somebody who's suspected of a criminal activity. As Minister indicated, we are concerned about the violence that we have observed in this microcosm of exam writing, where a candidate was stabbed in the hand. And fortunately, we have mechanisms in place to accommodate learners that may have been involved in incidents of this nature. For example, a learner who was stabbed in the hand, who could not write, is then allocated a scribe, somebody who writes on behalf of the learner. And in the Northern Cape, these two learners were accommodated. Unfortunately, there was a stabbing incident in the Northwest and Eastern Cape, and the condition was severe, and these learners could not write the examination. We still have incidents of faction fights, Eastern Cape and KZN, and unfortunately, one of our grade 10 learners lost his life in one of these faction fights. But in the other cases, we managed to then get the 3 learners, and they were not able to write the life sciences paper 2, but they were able to write the rest of the examination. Just this morning, we were reported of a hijacking incident in the Eastern Cape, where a group of exam officials that left Mthatha heading towards the marking center were hijacked in their Toyota double cab, and they were kept by these hijackers from about 7 o'clock in the evening till 2 o'clock in the morning. But fortunately, they were released unharmed, but the vehicle has been stolen. That's now the summary of some of the incidents, and you will notice that we do not have any major irregularities. These are more incidents which we have mechanisms in place to deal with them. Minister spoke about the fact that the exams are monitored very intensely to make sure that there is compliance to rules and regulations of the examination. And monitoring is conducted at different levels. We have the DBE from Pretoria that will monitor exams across the country. You have the provincial department that will be monitoring, the provincial head office. Then you have the district office and even the circuit office. We also go beyond that point of appointing private monitors that are independent individuals that are brought in from the community, and this gives the examination a greater sense of credibility. And what is important, we don't just monitor the examination at the writing center. Monitoring starts at the point where question papers are collected in the morning from about 6 o'clock to make sure that the protocols in terms of question paper collection are followed. And then the exam gets monitored throughout the session in the exam room, and the scripts, which are just as important as the question paper. The return of the scripts to the collection point is also monitored. Scripts are sealed in secure bags, and there must be no tampering of these scripts. Scripts are sealed at the examination center, and they only get opened when they get to the marking center. Daily reports are consolidated at a national level, where we get reports from over 6,000 centers. So in Pretoria, which is really the nerve center, we get a sense of what is happening across the country on a daily basis. And our DG has then gone the extra mile of convening meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning. Our DG, being an early riser, has got all of us to join him at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we have to provide him with a daily report on what transpired the day before. And then what we then do at those meetings is look at how we plan for the current day and for the days that lie ahead if there are particular challenges. And once a week, we then brought in our heads of exams from the provinces so that we also get a provincial report. So that's the examination writing. And as Minister indicated, this is possibly one of the most critical phases because it involves almost 800,000 learners. But now the focus shifts from writing across the 8,000 centers to marking, as Minister indicated, which will now take place at the 181 marking centers. And one may argue that marking is possibly the most important aspect from an educational perspective. Examinations is administrative in nature, but marking is where the actual judgment takes place. The learner's effort over 13 years will be evaluated by seasoned markers who are educators, and they are appointed based on criteria which are regulated in the PAM. And then we may have also alluded to the fact that before marking starts, and at the moment, we have what is referred to as national marking standardization meetings. And Minister has alluded to the fact that a large number of these meetings have been completed already. And at these meetings, every question paper is then looked at by your internal moderators, your chief markers from every province, together with the Umalusi panel of moderators, the DBE panel of examiners, and every question gets scrutinized. It gets scrutinized from a perspective of understanding how the learner would have responded to that question. Now, what is interesting that each of these internal moderators and chief markers that comes from the province to this meeting in Pretoria would have marked at least 20 scripts. So they have a sense of what are the kind of responses learners are providing to these questions. And on the basis of those responses, the marking guideline gets enhanced, improved, so that all possible alternatives. But besides just looking at the marking guideline and making sure it's comprehensive enough, internal moderators and chief markers are trained, and they train on live scripts. And what is interesting about this process, if there are 20 of them in a room, we give each one of them the same script to mark. And training is only completed when all 20 of these internal moderators and chief markers can show that they are reaching more or less the same mark for the different questions and for the question paper as a whole. And finally, we have what is known as an authorization process, where every chief marker internal moderator is authorized, which means you are certified, given the fact that you now complied with the stringent measures of the tolerant range. Minister has spoken about the fact that today is an important day because scripts are being moved to our marking centers. And there are 111 centers where scripts have already moved in, the trucks have been escorted under very close police security, and in some provinces private security, and the marking arrangements will commence. Now this is the total number of markers, 52,391 markers. These are just individuals that will be engaged in marking. But we also employ possibly another 15,000 university students, together with unemployed teachers, that help with the checking. Every script, beside being marked, gets checked. And then we have possibly another 5,000 officials from examination that are responsible. So in total, you are looking at over 70,000 officials, markers, that would be at these 181 centers over the next 13 to 15 days. That's the number of marking centers across the different provinces, with KwaZulu-Natal having 32, which is the largest number, and then Limpopo 28, and the like. Now, we have what is called early marking sessions. Now, an early marking session is where selected papers get marked before the formal or the main marking session starts. And in Gauteng, we had 4 of these that started on the 16th and were completed on the 26th. In Mpumalanga, they also started on the 16th, completed on the 26th with those papers. The same with Limpopo. Limpopo is still in progress, and they will complete on the 29th. And those are the subjects. Now, normally, the early marking session accommodates subjects where markers may not be available, particularly in the languages, because languages, you've got 3 papers, so you need a larger number of markers. So provinces will have an early marking session. These are the dates on which marking centers will open, when they will close, and this is very tightly managed. Minister also touched on the fact that we had to adopt some special precautionary measures, particularly with regard to the issue of foodborne contamination. And our DG personally convened a session on Sunday, the 24th of November, and we had over 500 officials that are involved in marking who were on an online session, and we brought in food experts from our National School Nutrition Program, who then took these 500 officials through some of the protocols, the rules that need to be followed in terms of food safety, food handling, and food preparation. So we're leaving no stone unturned in making sure that we have no food-related issues during the marking. And remember, you're going to have markers that are at these marking centers for a period of about 15 days. Besides making sure that we provide them with meals that are nutritious, and it comes very close to home-cooked meals, we want to make our markers as comfortable as possible in terms of the accommodation, because a comfortable marker is going to be a productive marker. And we also have contingency plans, like I indicated earlier, with regard to clean and continuous water supply, and that for us is a priority. We're also looking at areas where temperatures may be extremely high, like the Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, parts of Limpopo, so that our markers are kept hydrated and are able to function optimally. We also make sure that our marking centers are all located close to medical facilities. We've had the unfortunate incident of markers taking ill, and one or two of them have lost their lives at marking centers. So therefore, the medical provision is a priority in terms of marking centers. Backup electricity supply is also available, and we also make sure that our marking centers are close to the stations of the South African Police Services if there are any security issues that need to be attended to. The entire marking, I must say, has been planned with the prop jocks in each of the provinces. Now moving to some of the processes relating to mark capture, processing, and release of results. After marking takes place, we have almost 14 million marks that must be captured on our national computer system. Now, what makes this challenging is that all these marks are double captured. So it means you have two separate capturers that will capture these marks independently to make sure that there's accuracy in capturing. And all of this must be completed by the 16th of December. In fact, we have a cutoff at 1600 hours on the 16th of December. 100% of the marks must be captured. So that calls for close monitoring during this entire process. Now, after the marks are captured on the system, then starts the Umalusi process of standardization. But standardization is preceded by what we refer to as pre-standardization meeting, where we analyze the results as the Department of Basic Education, and we then present proposals to Umalusi at the standardization meeting, which will take place on the 23rd of December, just before Christmas, at 1500 hours. We will be looking at the composite national performance per subject and making proposals to Umalusi on mark adjustments or whether marks should be left as is. Post that process, we then do the processing on the system. Umalusi will then give us the go-ahead, hopefully on the 7th of January, that the exams have been free and fair, and we could then, Minister will then make the official announcement on the 13th of January at 1800 hours, and this would be a live transmission on all the major media stations. And then learners will receive their results at 8 o'clock in the morning at their schools. I thought it may be necessary that we just touch on one or two issues that had been in the media, which you may be interested in, and one of them is a City Press article which unfortunately created an erroneous impression of the cost of printing. The City Press article got the figures wrong, and they quoted an amount of 3.6 billion as the cost of printing. Now, this figure of 3.6 billion is in fact the cost to administer an entire examination, from setting of question papers to moderation, to marking, to processing, and payment of markers. But the actual cost of printing all of these question papers is in the vicinity of 220 million. So we immediately corrected this. But another issue was raised in the media in that article, was that you have Government Printing Works, which is a state printer, and Government Printing Works is not used. Now, one of our provinces use Government Printing Works, but GPW, Government Printing Works, does not have the capacity at the moment to print for all 9 provinces. We are in discussions with GPW to see how they could assist us in the long term. But the other important point is that printing is a highly secure activity, and it has to be extremely closely monitored. And therefore, there's the preference of every province establishing its own in-house facility where the printing takes place in the provincial offices or close to the provincial office under the direct supervision of the provincial examination managers. So that also had to be corrected in that article. Then currently, there's an issue that is playing out in the media with regard to the release of results in the newspapers. The information regulator has issued an enforcement notice preventing the Department of Basic Education from publishing the 2024 NSC results in the newspapers. Now, the DBE is of the view that we are fully compliant. And I think our DG has reiterated this, that compliance is that which we want to make sure. We as a department want to comply to the POPIA. Now, we have got legal advice from reputable senior counsel, which has confirmed that our learners need to be accommodated through release in the newspapers, given the fact that our number of learners are out of their homes, far away from their schools, and therefore cannot access their schools. And therefore, publication in the newspaper accommodates these learners. In addition, the results are published in the newspaper in an anonymized format. We use unique exam numbers, which is only known to the candidate. So nobody can even determine the results of another learner. And in addition, we were ordered by a court in 2022 when we had made a decision that we would not be releasing the results in the newspaper. We were ordered by the court to release the result. So on these 3 grounds, we think that we are within the ambit of the regulation. And this matter is being personally dealt with by our DG. And finally, we go to the lessons learned. Every examination is a learning experience. It's a mammoth exercise. And we are able to draw valuable lessons from every examination. I think what this examination has taught us, that there's a need for a closer monitoring of the weather. We're having unpredictable weather, and we need to make sure that we monitor the weather more closely. Psychosocial support for grade 12 learners is also becoming an important matter if one looks at the kind of incidents that our learners are subjected to. Greater protection of our girl learners, particularly those that are involved in night studies. We have met with the NACJOC in terms of learners prevented from writing the examination. There's some policy issues that we need to review moving forward. Violence, as Minister has touched on, is something that we are also paying very close attention to, and some principles that do not allow learners to write the exam for whatever reasons And here we're taking very harsh action against these principals. I think in conclusion, as Minister indicated, great appreciation for all that have been involved in this examination. And I think Minister has also touched on the events that learners engage in, and we're all looking forward to this important date of the 14th of January, and I think there would certainly be a celebratory mood on the morning of the 24th. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Dr. Kolia. Colleagues, we are quickly running out of time. In fact, we have 4 minutes left here. There's another briefing that's happening in this building, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll take questions or additions from the DM, and input from the DG. Nothing. All right, good stuff. I see 1 hand, 2. Any other hands? 3. Okay. Let me start at the front and move to the back. Please introduce yourself first.
Thank you. It's Milambi from SABC Radio News. I've just got one question, Minister. Post this process of exams marking, there's an issue of admissions and placements early in the year, which is always the case here in the Western Cape. Learners find themselves for various reasons being unplaced until later in the year. Are there plans to at least minimize the impact this time around?
All right, that's a question on admissions. Next. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Dennis Albert from Netwerk 24. I've got 2 questions for the Minister and one for Dr. Rufus. My questions to the Minister is those learners that were gang raped in the Eastern Cape, how is the process going to work now? Will they be offered the opportunity to complete the examination at some point in the near future? And the second question, Dr. Rupert spoke about the situation about publishing of results in the newspapers. Now, you would know that AfriForum, actually the ones who brought that case against the department in 2022, they are approaching the courts again with regards to the information regulator's decision now. I just want confirmation from you. Will you join that court case? Will you also approach the courts, or is it a given that the department will still publish the results in the newspapers despite the information regulator's decision? And then just for clarity to Dr. Rufus, you spoke about those incidents of faction fights in KwaZulu-Natal, if I'm not mistaken. Can you just elaborate on what exactly is those faction fights? Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. Let me go to you. You had your hand up.
I did, but he was before.
Oh, okay. But you will be asking still. Okay, let me start.
Thanks, Elijah. Lita Schneider from News Africa. We've just been made aware of an incident in Gauteng where a grade 12 learner has just completed her matric exams this year, but she's unable to register for tertiary because a learner who wrote the 2023 examinations did so using her identity number. Now, according to the Department of Home Affairs, the 2024 matriculant is the registered owner of that ID. Is there any way that the department can assist this learner with regard to applying for tertiary education, considering that the results that show up in the system are for the 2023 matriculant?
All right, thanks very much.
Good afternoon, it's Mason from the SABC. My question is just the issue around the reprinting of the geography paper, whether that incident had what impact that may have had on the examination process. And then I think I also read previously that there was a shortage of markers for subjects like history and the languages. You can just clarify for us whether those issues had been sorted out obviously now, before the start of the commencement of the marking of the MEC exams.
Okay, stuff. Any other questions? All right, there's a hand.
Hi, Okuhle Hlati from the Cape Times newspaper. Just to add on the colleague who asked regarding the KZN and Eastern Cape faction, I just also wanted clarity, is it gang related and also was it in the school premises, or is it incidences that happen outside? And also with the hijacking incident, do we know if it's a pure crime related or they were specifically targeted, maybe because there was an assumption that there might be papers? And lastly, Prof spoke about lessons learned, and then there was a mention of principals not allowing learners. Can we get the incidents? Maybe was it learners who were pregnant? Maybe was it learners owing school fees? Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. On the issue of the hijackings, even our communications team in the Eastern Cape, they were also hijacked at some point in the past 2 months. It seems they are targeting the government vehicles, the parties. So there's a trend there that is happening along the freeway entry. On the geography paper, that is another assessment body, it's Sakai, it's not DBE. I'm just trying to assess the process because we don't have time. But as for the rest, I think, Minister, I'll hand over to you, and then DG, and then Dr. Paul. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Elijah. SABC, the issue around admissions and placements for 2025, of course, we are now very much seized with the process of preparing for 2025. In fact, the Deputy Minister and I had been in a meeting just before this, essentially making sure that we are supporting provinces in they getting ready for 2025, whether it's the delivery of textbooks, workbooks, but also things around admission and whether they're ready. We know that particular provinces such as the Western Cape and Gauteng do struggle with admissions because of the sheer number and the volume of learners who are moving to those provinces because of the parents seeking economic opportunities. And so that does put tremendous amount of pressure on the system, but the provinces are trying to make provision to be able to absorb the numbers. It does become difficult for the provinces when parents apply late in the system, because of course, if Gauteng says on any given year they're expecting about 60,000 new learners who are coming into the province, they may be able to make provision for that kind of additional number. But if in January there's an extra 20,000 number of learners, then it becomes quite difficult to accommodate. The other issue sometimes becomes the choice of schools. Sometimes provinces battle with putting learners in the places or in the schools of choice by parents because of the demand, because of varying reasons, or because of late applications. But I have been in contact and will be in continuous contact, particularly with the MECs from Gauteng and the Western Cape, to make sure that we support them as much as we can, so that we can try and make the admission for 2025 as smooth as possible. The issue around the learners that were raped, they were able to write their papers, so they will not be requiring an additional opportunity. But it is deeply unfair that those learners had to endure such trauma and then still be forced to, because they wanted to go and write their paper, still, in spite of what has happened to them, have to go and write that paper. And this is why this incident particularly angers me, because as communities we should be protecting our learners. We should be rallying around them as they write in these important exams. So they are not going to be given an additional opportunity because they were able to write, and so that was done. The information regulator, whether or not we will go to court, I think it would be premature right now to indicate any kind of court action. We are obviously reading into what the information regulator is saying to us and what the system is able to do. As we've indicated, our view is that these are unique exam numbers that are published in the newspaper, and we're doing so for the aid of learners who are unable to get to their schools. And so it's premature right now to indicate whether or not even court action will be needed. Perhaps the parties will be able to find one another on the matter. And of course, I think that the information regulator is not acting in any malicious way, but of course they are trying to ensure compliance with the legislation. And we are prepared to work and collaborate with them. I'll ask the DG to answer the issue around the identity theft of the learner. Elijah has handled the issue of the geography paper. That was a paper that was administered by Sakai. But of course, course, it's not to say that we're simply saying this has nothing to do with us. Umalusi, being the regulator here, is the one that is involved in ensuring that that is rectified and that process is not tainted, and that the integrity of it is done. But it's not related to DBE. On the shortage of markers, as Dr. Palio indicated, we've got over 50,000 markers. But the issue is not necessarily the shortage of markers in terms of warm bodies. Often the reason why he spoke about earlier papers being marked and written and certain papers being marked earlier is that often the issue is around language papers, for instance, English 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you are marking all of those papers all at the same time, you are going to run into shortages because you're not going to be able to have language markers for all papers at the same time. So that's why we try and stagger the marking of certain papers, especially that have 3 volumes, for instance, where you need specific people to go and mark those. So the shortage is not warm bodies of markers, but it's specific subjects that we need to obviously make sure that we stagger in terms of their marking. For instance, English paper 1 was written first. So we are able to then say, look at the system, how do we stagger and make sure that markers are available? Can you touch on the issue around the identity theft and then and the principles issue? And then I'll give over to the data.
All right. No, thank you very much, Minister. Thank you, colleagues, for your very important and legitimate questions. Just to add on the issue of the information regulator, remember what Dr. Polia said, there's a court ruling, and the court ruling still stands, and not releasing the results to the media would be not in compliance with the court ruling. And I think that's why AgriForum is approaching the court. But as the minister said, we have no interest to drag each other to court. We are organs of the state, and therefore we must find ways. The law, Intergovernmental Relations Act, implore us to try and find mechanisms to resolve our disputes. The issue of principles preventing learners from writing, it's purely based on the league table. When principals are aware that some of the learners are going to bring their performance down, and it's exclusively based on learners who have not been doing well in their quarterly exams, in their half-yearly exams, in their preparatory exams, and therefore discouraging them from writing. The investigation has revealed that, and these are cases that we are dealing with in all instances. The learner who's got his ID number used elsewhere, I'm going to take this up with the DG of Home Affairs so that we quickly assist this learner. The learner must not be disadvantaged because of what happened, which is beyond his or her control. So I'm going to talk to the DG and get details about the learner, the location of the learner, so that we find ways of assisting that learner as quickly as possible. Faction fights or gang fights, it's faction fights. That's what we call them. I grew up in the village and the commercial farming area. You do have faction fights. Maybe in the urban areas, they manifest themselves as gangs and so on. But these happen in either townships or in the villages, people belonging to different groups and fighting from the community or the village, and that spilling over to schools. But as Dr. Polia indicated, fortunately we were able to find a secure place for learners who were involved in these faction fights, and they were able to write. They only missed writing one paper, I think it's life sciences. But the rest of the other papers they were able to write. I mean, the reports also indicate that they are faction fights. And that's how we understand them. I don't know whether there's anything.
Yeah, thank you so much, Minister. I did greet the police. They looked very angry when I left.
Maybe they look happier now.
Oh yeah, maybe now they are a bit happier. I just want to add on what the minister said about those who were raped. They did not just go and write, they were supported. Psychosocial support. They did get the psychosocial support and they were monitored and closely monitored, and that gives us confidence that they wrote because they were prepared. It's just that this disturbed them, that's why they were given that psychosocial support. Yeah, the DG covered, because I wanted to talk on this, what you call fraction fights, that in the lack of better terminology, these are just cakes. It's just unfortunate that it happened in the Eastern Cape, where we believe that majority of people of the Eastern Cape are one groupings, and not necessarily, but ethnicity should not be an issue in the Eastern Cape. But unfortunately, because differing from the area where people come from, they have a tendency of not accepting one another, and they are in the same school. So that's why these gangs, they will erupt and cause a challenge to the learners. So yeah, I think on the issue of which minister indicated about the pens down, our children, they misinterpret the pens down with the pens as pens. Yeah, because when they go to those celebrations, they try to take off their pens, as in the trousers, pens, instead of saying pens down, then they put the pen. And others have even a tendency, Minister, of tearing the uniform when we request them that if I know that I'm done, share the uniform with the school, because there are learners that are in dire need of that uniform. Don't write it with a corky pen and all these other things. We request them to leave the uniform at a school if you don't have siblings that might use that uniform. And as they celebrate, as Minister indicated, they must celebrate responsibly. And one other thing that we can request to parents is that let's not expect too much from our children. They might not even enjoy the festive season. To say, yeah, if the report comes here and you didn't get level 7s, and yet as a parent you did not even get that level 7, now you expect the child to get level 7s. You put pressure, unnecessary pressure on the child. So we are requesting parents also to consider that they must not put any pressure to these children as they are waiting patiently for their results, and those that are not going to make it, there's still another chance. We are here for the children of South Africa, and they are all very important. There is no child that is less important than others. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, DM. Thank you, Minister. Thanks, colleagues, for attending. We appreciate the support. Let's continue to engage. We are available to provide any additional information that you may require. Most of you here, we have our contact information. Thank you very much. Thanks, Minister, and the whole team.
Thank you, Minister.